Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller horror films from 2026, titled 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. Somewhere in zombie-ravaged England, a sadistic cult is seen tying up and hanging a group of helpless survivors. The cultists then put on bizarre masks, before brutally skinning the victims while they are still conscious, causing them to scream in agony. We see that the cult members laugh at their disturbing ceremony, while a nearby survivor hides in terror, realizing there is no mercy left in this new world. It all started with a teenage boy named Spike, who was found in the previous movie by a group of cult members called Fingers, which is led by Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal. The gang, who is wearing flashy tracksuits and cheap wigs, is currently bullying Spike, while Jimmy watches with twisted amusement. He tells his Fingers that this is a fight to the death, after which he prays to Satan, whom he claims to be his father. After that, a guy brutally injures Spike, while everyone erupts into cruel laughter at the helpless little boy. In desperation, Spike grabs a knife and pulls the bully's pants before stabbing him in the thigh. It is revealed that Spike hit the guy's artery, who now bleeds heavily. The injured guy begs for help, but his friends just laugh at him, and moments later, he finally collapses dead due to blood loss. Upon seeing this, Jimmy is impressed by Spike, so he welcomes the boy into his cult, and renames him Jimmy, since he gives all Fingers variations of his own name. The boy is traumatized by what he has just done, but he has no choice but to follow them. Elsewhere, in the woods, a man is walking cautiously, but he is suddenly hunted down by a pack of infected zombies who burst from the trees. And then, as he falls, their largest and most dominant leader, the Alpha, separates his head from his body with monstrous strength. In another scene, we meet a man named Dr. Ian Kelson, who finds the dead body of a woman, and begins dragging it away. He soon comes across the Alpha zombie in the distance, who charges at him, but Kelson uses a dart to tranquilize him, and the zombie becomes calm and subdued. Kelson then takes out the dart from his body, and informs the Alpha zombie that he has named him Samson, based on his immense size and strength. It seems like the Alpha zombie doesn't understand a single word. Later, we see how Dr. Kelson burns the dead body he found earlier, and adds the skull to his collection in his bone temple. He then goes to his shelter, where he listens to music, and reminisces about the good days while looking at old pictures. The next day, Kelson once again comes across Samson. It seems like the zombie is deliberately pursuing the old man to get medicated. After Kelson tranquilizes him, the two sit down together, during which the doctor keeps talking to Samson, in the desperate hope of getting a reply. Next, Kelson takes a risk, and dozes off next to Samson. And then, when he wakes up a while later, the Alpha zombie is gone. Kelson is relieved that the zombie didn't hurt him, so in the following days, he continues working on the medication with renewed determination. Samson also continues to visit him every day, and they develop such a strong and unusual friendship that the doctor even begins dancing with the Alpha zombie. Elsewhere, we see a young couple, Tom and Kathy, and an older man, Yano, foraging for mushrooms in the woods. But then, they come across an infected person. Despite this, Yano approaches the zombie to kill it. However, the zombie's scream attracts more infected, who begin chasing the old man relentlessly. The couple run away, and though Yano shouts for them to wait, Kathy, who is pregnant, urges Tom to leave the man behind. Soon, Yano is overpowered by the zombies, and he soon becomes infected himself. Shortly after, Tom and Kathy arrive at a farmhouse, where they live with a group of survivors. As Kathy tries to explain what has just happened, an old man living with them tells her they have visitors. We then see that Jimmy and his cult members are sitting at a dining table inside and eating food as if they own the world. Jimmy even asks one of his Fingers, Jimmy-ma, to do the dance and entertain everyone, to which she agrees. When Kathy asks what they are doing here, Jimmy says they are a group of wanderers who were hungry and tired, so they came here to nourish themselves. Upon realizing that they are not welcome, Jimmy reveals they are going to leave, but not before killing the residents first. Hearing this, one of the residents throws a pan of hot water at them, and Tom shouts at Kathy to run, which she does. However, the cult captures the rest of the residents, and Jimmy asks one of his fingers, Jimmy Inc., to find their next spot for tomorrow. She is annoyed that she has to miss their ritual called charity, but obeys the orders, and walks off alone. Later, in the Bone Temple, we see Kelson dancing in front of Samson, and Jimmy Inc. notices them from a distance, and is stunned. Back in the farmhouse, the cult has tied up the 4 residents in a barn, while Jimmy tells the story of the old man Nick, aka Satan. It turns out the cult members often travel around, and find people to sacrifice to old Nick, and they call this ritual charity. Next, Jimmy asks his fingers to prepare for the ritual, after which they all put on their masks. Kathy is seen creeping nearby, and she watches with horror as the sadistic group skins her people's torsos while they are still alive. This sight disturbs Spike so much that he runs outside while vomiting. He is found by Jimmy Inc., who has just returned. Spike says he can't do this, so Jimmy Inc., who seems unexpectedly empathetic, proceeds to comfort the boy. The scene cuts to evening, where we see Kelson hanging out with Samson, and tells him that the medicine he has been giving him is mixed with various things, but the main component is morphine. At Samson's rate of consumption, he only has enough morphine to last for the next 2 weeks. He claims that over the last 28 years, he has emptied every medicine cabinet within a 70-mile radius, which means they won't find any more morphine. Therefore, Kelson decides to euthanize the alpha zombie, so he can have lasting peace. However, just as he is about to proceed, Samson, who had been staring into the sky, suddenly says, "Moon."
Moon.
Upon hearing this, the doctor is stunned, and realizes that Samson is somehow regaining his human self, so he stops the procedure. Back at the barn, the cult has managed to kill 3 people, but Tom is still alive. Jimmy then tells him that he needs strong fingers, so he asks Tom to choose a finger to fight to the death. If he wins, he will be welcomed into the cult, but if he loses, or even refuses, he will be skinned alive just like his friends. With no other choice, Tom reluctantly agrees, and chooses to fight Jemima, since she appears to be the weakest. After Jimmy prays to Satan, the fight between Tom and Jemima finally begins, and he immediately rushes to attack her. But Jemima turns out to be very skilled, so she easily overpowers him and manages to hurt him badly, while Kathy watches from a distance in horror. Soon, Jemima pins Tom to the ground, and sits on him, before preparing to skin him alive. But all of a sudden, she is brutally hit on the back of the head by someone. It turns out to be Kathy, who attacked Jemima by swinging a meat hook, and she soon runs away as she is discovered by the cult. Furious, Jimmy orders his people to go after her, while Tom manages to grab a gas canister which he uses to set one of Jimmy's men on fire. Outside, Jimmy Inc. is seen accompanying Spike, right when they hear screaming from inside and grow worried. Soon, the barn door opens and a burning man comes out, which shocks both of them. The remaining cult members run outside in panic, while the barn begins to burn, and Tom and Jemima dies inside it. An enraged Jimmy then sends Spike after Kathy, who is seen running in the distance. With no other choice, Spike follows Kathy and manages to corner her at the gate. Spike now begs her to take him with her, but she doesn't trust him, and knocks him down, before running away. And so, Spike returns to Jimmy and nervously lies to him, saying he killed the woman. But Jimmy doesn't believe him, and asks where the body is, and why he didn't bring her head, or her unborn child as proof. Furthermore, one of the fingers begins accusing Spike of being the cause of everything, because if he had been inside the barn, he would have been chosen instead of Jemima. He suggests Spike should be killed, but Jimmy Inc. intervenes, and says that maybe they should let old Nick decide this. She reveals how she saw old Nick today at Temple of Bones, and he was red, and was dancing with an alpha zombie, which is impossible for a normal human. She thus suggests meeting old Nick in person, and letting him decide if they should kill the little boy. The next day, in the woods, we see Samson eating fruits, and wiping his hands on his clothes, revealing that he is getting much better every day. Kelson, on the other hand, is seen meticulously doing research on how he can cure his friend completely. However, when he goes to find Samson again, he is nowhere to be seen, which makes him worried. Meanwhile, nearby, the cult members are keeping watch on him, and even though Spike and the Kelson had already met each other from the previous movie, the boy doesn't recognize him this time, because of his red appearance. Jimmy then lies to his fingers, saying that this is indeed his father, and says maybe his dad built this new haven recently, which is why he wasn't aware of this location. Next, Jimmy Inc. suggests they should go and visit him, but Jimmy refuses, saying he will go see him first, and ask if he is willing to see visitors. Jimmy thus heads alone to the Bone Temple, where he approaches the doctor, and asks if he is Old Nick, but Kelson responds that he is just a doctor. He explains this place is a memorial to honor the dead, and his skin is red because he covers himself with iodine, which kills the virus that causes infection. Upon hearing this, Jimmy is relieved, and says he was worried thinking he was about to meet his dad. He then opens up, and reveals how he is the son of Satan, who regularly speaks to him in his head. Meanwhile, we see Jimmy Inc. and Spike in the distance, and he says that man is probably not Old Nick, and they should leave him alone. But Jimmy Inc. believes he is indeed Old Nick, but she doubts whether Jimmy is his son, because he didn't know about this location, and also hesitated when answering if the old man was really his father. Elsewhere, Kelson and Jimmy are seen talking about what they remember from the past before the zombie virus started. And then, Jimmy shockingly asks him to pretend to be Satan in front of his people, or else he threatens to feed the doctor his own intestines. That night, Jimmy tells his fingers that tomorrow night they will be able to meet Old Nick, but there are certain rules they must follow. Nobody must touch him, and no one should talk to him directly, as only Jimmy is allowed to speak to him. Elsewhere, Kelson tells Samson everything, and says how he hasn't feared for his life in many years, but today he worried about what will happen to Samson if he is gone. So Kelson wants to give him a larger dose tonight to accelerate the experiment, and see if Samson can regain his humanity. At dawn, Spike wakes up, and tries to escape from the deranged cult. Unfortunately, he doesn't get very far before he is caught by one of the infected. Spike manages to defeat him, but he is soon attacked by one of the cultists, Jimmy Fox, who has followed him from the camp. It turns out Jimmy Fox hates the boy, as the guy who was killed by Spike at the beginning of the movie was his best friend. Jimmy Fox now tries to stab Spike, but Kelly shows up to intervene, and she manages to kill him. After that, she comforts Spike, and asks him to stick with her. Later, the two return to the camp, where Jimmy Inc. tells the group how Jimmy Fox tried to run away, since he was too scared to meet Old Nick, and she had to kill him. Jimmy is skeptical of her claims, but says let's see what Old Nick says tonight about this. Elsewhere, we see that Samson is now acting like a human, and washing his hands in a river. He goes to an abandoned train, which brings back some memories of his old life. Through a flashback, we see Samson traveling on the train, when an attendant arrives, and asks for his ticket. In the present, Samson snaps back to reality and finds himself surrounded by zombies, and he shockingly says, "I don't have a ticket." This display of humanity provokes the zombies to attack him, forcing Samson to kill them in self-defense. Elsewhere, Kelson spends his days making various preparations for his performance as Satan. At nightfall, Jimmy and his cult members show up, and they notice the candles hanging from the towers, which leaves them amazed. Everyone, except Jimmy, wears masks, before proceeding. Soon, they arrive at the Bone Temple, where Kelson greets them using a rigged sound system with pre-recorded voiceovers. He begins performing a dance routine to an Iron Maiden song. Up next, he throws a torch, and ignites the petrol around them, forming a blazing circle. He even releases drug-laced fumes into their faces, exposing them to hallucinogens. It is an astonishing performance, and they completely believe it, leaving even Jimmy impressed. After the music stops, Kelson asks the fingers to kneel, and Jimmy asks him if he has any instructions for them. Kelson reluctantly tells them to continue their infernal mission, which is to skin people alive, and not question Jimmy's orders. He also asks them to grow the number of fingers, but his attention is suddenly drawn to the little boy in a mask. When Kelson approaches and removes his mask, he is stunned to see it is none other than Spike. Realizing he cannot let the boy go with these sadistic people, Kelson says he has one more commandment. He suddenly says he wants the sacrifice of Jimmy, like in the Bible, when God required the sacrifice of his child, Jesus. Upon hearing this, Jimmy Inc. excitedly approaches her leader to crucify him, so the desperate man finally reveals that this old guy is just a scammer. To prove it, he even stabs Kelson in the gut, and declares that he himself is the real Satan. He asks his fingers to kill traitorous Jimmy Inc., so the two cult members rush to attack her, but the skilled woman unexpectedly overpowers, and kills them. But then, when she turns around, she is stunned to see that Spike has managed to stab Jimmy, so Jimmy Inc. gives the psychopath a brutal punch and knocks him down. Following this, Spike approaches the badly injured Kelson and begins crying, but the old man insists that it's fine. Spike argues that he should have let them go. But Kelson says that when he saw him behind the mask, he couldn't let him go, as Spike has suffered enough. Here, Jimmy Inc. says that, whether he is Satan or not, she will fulfill his last command, which is to crucify Jimmy. With this, Jimmy Inc. finally tells her real name to Spike, which is Kelly, after which they both work together to crucify Jimmy on the bone temple, and leave him to die. A crucified Jimmy is seen crying, saying he can't hear his father's voice anymore. Suddenly, a brutal Samson shows up, and Jimmy hallucinates him as Satan with horns atop his head. Up next, Samson calls Kelson by his name. He thanks him, and carries away his body from there, while Jimmy asks why he has forsaken him. Moments later, Jimmy is approached by an infected and presumably killed. In the final scene, we see the protagonist of the first movie, Jim, who is teaching his teenage daughter, Sam, history at their home. And then, they suddenly hear some noises outside, so they grab a gun, and go outside to the top of a nearby hill. There, they see two people being chased by a group of infected, and based on their clothes, they appear to be Spike and Kelly. Sam then asks Jim if he will help them, and he replies, of course, as the movie comes to an end. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.